And welcome back to coverage here at Pro Tour Murders at Karlov Manor. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe. I'm with Monty Gavudi. And yes, that is actually right outside the convention center where we are here. It's a beautiful scene here in Chicago. We had a little bit of snow last night, and there's a little dusting out there. But it's nice and warm inside. Plenty of players filing in here as well. We've got this massive MagicCon surrounding the Pro Tour here. But for us, it's business time. We're about to hit the first round of the day here on day 2 of the PT. Of course, this is booster draft. We just watched Jesse Hampton draft a black-red deck with a couple of splashes there. But the big headliner is Jesse's coming in with an 8-0 record. Now, Jesse's opponent, Jason, 7-1. So 2 heavy hitters coming in from yesterday. And I tell you, you have a record that good, you can't help but go to bed last night kind of thinking like, if I put together a run, you know, we could be looking at a top 8 here. This is Jesse's list. We just saw this before the break, but you can see it is heavy into black-red with some splashes. There's 3 blue cards and then a green card in World Soul's Rage down there as well. You're thinking 2-1-ish for this list, Monty?
That's what I would call before the matches play out.
All right, and what about Jason? They drafted, the color pair that I like to see in this format with Boros, and I see some really powerful stuff here. Right there in the middle, Wojak Investigator, and then below it, War Leader's Call. That's nasty.
I don't know how you can be looking at the 3 drops. There is an Agris Coast. I think that is one of the best cards
That's
in
like
this
second best
format.
card in the format.
Yeah, absolutely obscene card. So Jason's deck,
wow,
this is fantastic.
See, this is, I guess, I mean, maybe it's just an openness thing, but like this is what I think of when I think of this format, not the stuff that Simon and Jesse are into. I know pod plays a little different than, you know, leagues and stuff, but this is where I want to be. Like, give me this deck all day long. You know, Luis drafted this yesterday. He drafted straight up Boros 3-0. Like, why are people drafting this thing?
Jason, look, Jesse could not have had this deck.
Was heavily
let's
cut.
be real. There's 4 rares there in Jason's deck.
Well, maybe he could have tried harder.
There was a Phoenix in the 3-drop slot, by the way. We missed that. So this is a Phoenix mirror in limited after all the Phoenix mirrors we had yesterday. So
there was a Lamplight Phoenix for Jason?
Yes. So their deck, absolutely fantastic. And, you know, it really is about the seat you're in because we watched Jesse's draft pretty closely. It wasn't like he was ignoring white signals. They weren't there.
Well, Jason also not ignoring white signals.
Nope.
Jesse has put together a reasonable deck for the format, but I think Jason's just going to run over
I'm very
Jesse.
I'm very scared for Jesse. And look, Jason, very, very accomplished limited player. Both of these players were in the top 8 of the 100K Vegas Open that happened at MagicCon Las Vegas back in October. Jason was the champion. Jason won that event.
And, you know, I think Jesse was the runner-up.
So this might be a rematch.
That's crazy. The old OU again.
Jason's first Pro Tour here, so 7-1, really great start. And, you know, when you go 7-1 overnight and then get that deck in limited, oh, you're feeling pretty good.
These
about where
opportunities do not come up often. And if you're Jason, they have to be thinking, I really want to capitalize on this one. And look at this curve. Nothing on 1, just an escape tunnel. But Innocent Bystander into Lamplight Phoenix. And meanwhile, Jesse has yet to produce a blocker.
Or a red source.
Or a red source.
Remember, blue is the splash here. And, oh, okay, so that's an error on the deck graphic because he is playing that surveillance monitor, which
he had to.
Yes, you and I were both surprised that
yeah,
you're splashing blue and you're not playing the monitor in your deck. So really glad to see that the monitor did make it in because this was, in my opinion, the second best blue card that Jesse had access to. I would have played this over the Drag the Canal and the Drake. So I'm very happy to see it in the deck.
I was with you on that one.
Oh.
Look at this curve.
All right, let's wrap it up here.
Agris Cos on turn 4 after the 2-3-4, and you saw a pause from Jesse like, really?
Yes, 13.
All right, we're on game 2. Cool. So what does
Jesse... This game is actually just going to be over next turn.
Yeah. You have no blockers. If you play a blocker, Agris Coast will suspect it. So your next blocker is also not a blocker. Okay, all right.
Let's race.
Let's race. And now that Jesse has not produced a creature, Jason can just go, all right, let's get rid of your surveillance monitor. We don't want that anymore. Another Haze creature.
Anyway, this is a red herring.
5, 7,
Everything
11.
in, double strike.
Bye-bye,
double
monitor.
strike, bye-bye.
You're 2.
1, 2, 6 plus.
Well, first strike, right?
Oh yeah, first strike. You take 2 down to 11, and then you take 9 down to 2.
2.
Cool.
This is just insane.
Yeah, what are we doing here? Really?
What we're doing here is sideboarding, because that was game number 1 with the 2-3-4 from Jason, and they trivially easily run over Jesse Hampton.
All right. We need to stop for a second. We need to slow down.
That is a dream curve.
Yes. This is not.
I told you Boros was good, Mommy.
This
That's
is
all
not
I'm
a.
gonna say.
This is not a condemnation of
you draft
Jesse's
Boros,
deck.
This is what happened.
This is not a condemnation of the handshake strategy. Jason's deck is absurd. Jason curved their rares. This is not indicative.
That's all I'm saying, Monty. I said Boros was good. You didn't listen. What's so bad about Lamplight Phoenix into Agris cost? Like, it's an easy game.
Look, Marshall, if I could do that curve every game of Limited, I too would do so. But some of us are drafting in the Pro Tour pods instead of the Arena Best of 1 leagues. Not me, of course. I'm here in the booth with you.
Yeah,
so.
you're not even in the Arena League. Well, let's see if Jesse can right the ship here. He does have a lot of removal, and if he can find some in a reasonable time frame, he may be able to stem the bleeding. He didn't actually take out anything from Jason in the first game, but Jason, another great start with the Goblin Mask Maker into the Disguised Creature on turn 2. Wow, this is not where Jesse wants to be either. Demand answers on NSEP, trying to, well, find answers in this case. Is there a removal spell?
There is a push.
There it is.
There is also a Judith in Jesse's hand. So
okay, so that's a game plan.
Assuming we don't see Mountain Phoenix, Plains Agris costs, Jesse could get to Judith and, you know, right this ship. But Jason is making sure that they send the message, I am the beatdown. I am the aggressor here.
Jesse eagerly awaiting his fate. And now it's a Wojak Investigator. It's just literally all rares all the time here for Jason. This is incredible. Land number 4 for Jesse is an island and then a pass of the turn.
Look, this is a great win from Jason, but I do not acknowledge this loss from the Black-Red strategy. This is not...
Well, you do acknowledge that Jesse regrets not drafting the deck that Jason
Yes,
right?
absolutely. Yeah. I think Jesse saw the deck list and asked,
back,
would you like to trade
I'd rather
this?
have that one. I don't think Jesse saw a playable white common
no
draft. Which, by the way, is where a lot of the reaction has come.
Yes.
You know, are people adjusting in that way.
Right.
So there's the red herring to add to the piling on damage.
Judith time. Will it survive? And Marshall, here's the thing: is we're seeing the best red-white deck at the table, right?
Yes.
Now, what I'm curious about is what do the next 2 potentially red-white decks at the table look like? Because what we show on camera are the decks that are winning, right? We are going to continue seeing the cream rise to the top. But there are decks that are losing here in the process. There are decks that tried to go red-white because they saw some of the signals. Fortunately for Jesse, maybe unfortunately, who knows, he didn't see any signals. He stayed out of the red-white lane. What do the other people that tried to draft red, white, end up?
I would imagine a second red-white drafter would have a perfectly functional deck, and the third one would be struggling a little.
Right.
Yeah. By the way, Jesse, he's in a particularly miserable position, not just because of the card quality, but because there was some face-up play there. If you notice, the red herring got cast off of double mountain, leaving double plains up, which isn't how you normally tap your mana, and that's because there was a Granite Witness there to, on end step, tap down Judith and clear the way for yet another clean attack there for Jason.
Yeah, and then the Phoenix came down.
Phoenix hit too, so it's just overwhelming, and we still haven't seen enough removal here from Jesse to really get the job done. He's going to use.
And I mean, this is just over in the air, right? Jesse's at 4. There's 2 flying creatures there, here to attack for 5. So
yeah, this is going to be GG.
3. Okay.
Oh,
Draw.
he did give lifelink to the spell, thanks to Judith. So that's +4 life, so he's not dead yet. We don't see that often, but Judith can give Death Touch and lifelink to the spell. That is the mode you don't really pick very often, but here it's...
Trigger,
All right, well...
Combat.
Okay, sure.
Now,
bye-bye, Judith.
There's going to be a trade here. Judith for Red Herring, never really where you want to be. And by the way, you're down to 3. And this just feels like it's going through the motions here for Jason E. They have...
Look, all right.
Incredible.
That's...
That, how long was that? 8 minutes total? Like...
That was half of pack 1. About.
Jason.
Approximately.
And by the way, that evens things up for them, right? So now we have 2 X and 1 players, you know, dragging Jesse right into that scrum as well.
Yeah, we had no XO1s overnight. So Jesse was the last undefeated player in the field. No longer the case. There are no undefeated players anymore. And Jason now leading the field alongside Jesse. Really impressive
Another
stuff from
win
them.
for the mighty Boros Legion.
I don't want to hear it. Take your rares, push them aside, take your play boosters. I do not want to hear it. No, thank you.
We're going to take a short break. When we come back, though, we'll have more draft coverage here from the Pro Tour. Don't go anywhere. And welcome back to coverage here at Pro Tour Murders at Karlov Manor. Marshall Sutcliffe with Monty Devuti. Monty, we just saw a team fight there between Handshake and Sanctum of All.
Yep.
Would you like to do so again?
I would love to. These
We
are
can
the
arrange
teams that each put 2 players here into the feature pod. So why not just see the other 2 members from the teams?
That's right. We've got Simon Nielsen and Heath Butler facing off against each other as well. And once again, take a look at those overnight records. 7-1-0 from our reigning player of the year there. And Heath Butler also 7-1-0. I mean, these are the type of records that you don't get that often at the Pro Tour level. Really want to capitalize on it. Let's see what Simon came up with. All right, Simon, sticking to his guns.
Look, this is exactly where we expected Simon to be. He was sitting to Jesse's left. Jesse went black-red. Simon took the cards that were available. We saw no white cards going through that path. This wasn't an active choice to avoid white. They weren't there. So this is, you know, pretty perfect signal reading from Simon to go exactly into the 2 colors that his teammate to his left was not taking.
Experienced drafter at the helm here, for sure.
Incredible read on the draft table.
And let's see what Heathe came up with. They've got, okay, black-white. This is a good combo in the format. Anything standing out here, Monty, as far as power level goes?
I see the splash for the Case of the Crimson Pulse
Little
that we
reload.
saw Jesse pass, the second copy of Case of the Sash Skeleton that we saw Jesse pass, but this is really the format at its core. There's very few rares in this deck, very low curve, double season Consultant, that Neighborhood Guardian, one of the most premium uncommons for these white strategies. That's going to do a lot of work. We see some combat tricks on the job, Auspicious Arrival, and the third copy of Push-Pull at the table, making it into Heath's deck here.
Yeah, I think that Heathe, you know, the card that stands out the most to me is On the Job.
Yeah.
I think that if they can get On the Job after a reasonable curve, that is a way that Simon, as blue-green, is going to have a very difficult time interacting with. If the time eclipses for that to be good enough to win, then Simon's going to be able to take over quite easily from there.
Yeah, and one thing to note about Simon's deck, 3 copies of Tunnel Tipster. So he's skipping spots on the curve. He is expecting to go faster than we saw Jesse's deck do.
That's right.
One of the big issues with Jesse's deck was a lack of low-cost plays. And when you're playing a card like Case of the Sash Skeleton as the mid-range deck, well, that card can't block, so you're not presenting the road bumps. Now, I'm not saying road bumps would have helped Jesse in his match, but, you know, it would have made it a little closer. Simon has the ability to go faster, even though he is a blue-green deck.
Heath is going to start things off with Escape Tunnel. Not the ideal opener. Rather play a puppy dog.
Yeah, a little Gorehound. But plenty of 2-drops.
But this, yeah, plenty of 2s, and also, you know, getting the mana correct. This was a mulligan for Heath as well. Looks like they're on 6, is that right?
I would
6.
guess so, because they were on the play.
Yep.
Neighborhood Guardian.
Okay, and there's Neighborhood Guardian to start things off for Heath, so that's right where you want to be.
That's the best 2-drop, and my boy has the Vigilante is in the hand. You're a bit of a hater, but,
I am.
you know.
I am.
When the Vigilante comes down and pumps that Sanguine Savior, makes it a 3-power lifelink flyer, we'll see who's laughing. Yeah, no.
Oh, sure.
That's when you'll know.
Judge, can we continue, or?
I'll pause your clock.
One big thing about Simon,
throw my cards right
really
before
clear
my
communication.
Very clear.
Just everything is deliberate, making sure table, judge, opponent, always communicating. And, you know, he is a very jolly person in general. You always see him laughing, conversing with his opponents. So no difference here, regardless of the stakes, whether it's playing for top 8, first feature pod of day 2. And, you know, a reigning player of the year. So very much a great face of the game.
He's one of the great personalities in our game, no doubt about it.
Way scarier than a look.
I think the unicorn is scarier.
All right, there's the Tunnel Tipster. And yeah, he says, yeah, it's kind of scary. Simon says, yeah, well, you got Neighborhood Guardian, my friend.
The unicorn is scarier. Truer words have never been spoken and also been so funny.
All right, so we're going to see a disguised creature. It was a Sanguine Savior, as it turns out. We had a good angle on that. And that's going to get a chip in for 3. Down to 17 goes Simon.
Yeah, looks like we do have a 1-3 in Heath's hand alongside the Has the Vigilante and the Plains. The Consultant, I believe it is. Seasoned Consultant.
The 2-ball.
Yeah. So that'll be able to be played. Now, if Heath's ideal curve here, if they can draw another 2-drop to go 2-drop, 2-drop, trigger my Guardian twice next turn, and then 5th land has the Vigilante, now we've got a stew cooking.
So this is interesting. It's a Projector Inspector. This is a card that Simon mentioned to you and I that likes it but doesn't prioritize it in the format, but you know, obviously still good enough to see play.
Yeah, I think what his intent behind the statement was, it's replaceable. For us, we view it as one of the top blue commons.
Right.
But that's because you are drafting decks around it, especially blue-white, that you're playing multiple inspectors and you're sifting through your deck. Every creature, every other creature is a detective. When you're just using it as a roadblock, when you're just throwing it under this Neighborhood Guardian, when you're just blocking that disguise, it is replaceable, but you do get some value out of it still. So I think it's a card that Simon very happy to play, just not, I need to take every projector inspector I see kind of situation.
Right. And, you know, take a look at the graveyard there for Simon. Remember, he does have 3 evidence examiners as well. So, you know, having cards in the yard to start turning into clues is a valuable thing. And the projector inspector plus the second surveil land has helped him do that.
Did somebody order a second 2-drop? Because I believe Heath picked up Case of the Sash Skeleton. So
oh, there it is.
The curve is playing out, Marsh.
It really is.
And 2 2-drops means that Heath doesn't have to spread the love here. Can just go 2 pumps onto the same creature and then be able to attack through the projector inspector freely here.
Skeleton? Yep, here. And it's a sus skeleton.
It's a
pretty
sus
sussy
skeleton.
Targeting the guardian itself?
Yep. Play a fusion full time. Trigger here again.
Yep.
Combat. Attack with full.
This is the power of Neighborhood Guardian.
Card's great.
It's an incredible 2-drop.
I mean, two drop and it's responsible for all the damage so far.
Right.
And it's a lot. I mean, Simon's down to 13 already.
In 2 attacks from a 2-drop.
Yeah, it's really impressive.
Yeah.
And this board is getting big. You know, now I mentioned it at the onset, but now I'm starting to think on the job.
Yep.
If Heath can find that, they could potentially close out this game in the next turn or 2. And, you know, Heath probably needs to do that, right?
Yes.
You know, the longer this game goes, the more it's going to start favoring Simon. He's got the ability to generate massive card advantage over the long term. His creatures are bigger.
That's the difference between you and I. You're thinking of on the job. I'm thinking of a land so I can slam the Heathe the Vigilante. We are not the same, Marshall Sutcliffe.
Oh, that's great. Yep. I just dream big, you know, a common.
I'm dreaming bigger, a 5-drop common. Look,
the 5-drop.
The 5-drop common, the definitive 5-drop common. One thing to note about the situation here is Case of the Stash Skeleton is able to find that on the job should that suspected skeleton die. So really when you are actively looking for that all-important spell to close out games, if you are in Heath Butler's seat, you don't mind turning all these creatures. There's the planes. Vigilante time, baby.
You hit it.
Here we go. It doesn't get any bigger.
This is great.
My boy.
This is a card that Simon Nielsen has definitely not played in the format.
It is
I'm not playing
Ogre.
as the Vigilante.
It is Ogre.
It's Ogre. This game is
This
Ogre?
game is Ogre. That's right.
Oh, my goodness.
That's a Vigilante is a giant for disclaimer purposes, not an ogre. But this game is Ogre.
He looks like an ogre. How about that? All right, everybody's coming in. And we got to see some very important blocks here from Nielsen. You saw he did play the Evidence Examiner and use a Topiary Panther to get himself a clue.
Okay.
Not on my watch.
And that is not on my watch.
So I take...
And this is where the issues form, is you trade off. Look,
really?
Heathe the Vigilante is still there. That's not going anywhere. Big boy's still around, but you have a skeleton, so you don't have your demonic tutor case online.
Right.
And you have a Heathe the Vigilante. That's about it. You can make the skeleton a little bigger, but Simon got away from that combat only taking 2 damage.
He's down to 11, but now he's going to untap with minimum 5 mana, potentially 6 with a land drop, and he can start slamming some big creatures now.
I think there's a Crocodile in his hand.
That's
So
good
6
enough
land
with the
would allow that to just come down. There it is. That would turn off the Vigilante, so he could potentially get away from another turn only taking 2 damage. And now is the question.
Where did that card come from? Makeshift Binding off the top of the library there.
You cannot
For
not
Heath.
seize the top of my deck, Marshall,
Right, and
as they say.
Simon says that is rude.
Yeah.
An unkind gesture, to say the least, and a big attack, and this is going to put the ball back into Simon Nielsen's court in a very big way.
I think there's a Glint Weaver. Okay, all right.
Oh,
that's
Glint
big.
Weaver is
That's
a
huge.
great way to get back in this
All 3?
game. Yeah,
All 3 gain 6?
All 3 gain 6 is
Yep.
where I would go for sure. Your opponent's top decking, like...
All 3 counters here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right, Simon Nielsen. So he's going to put 3+1/+1 counters on the big Reach Spider, and that'll gain him 6 back up to 10 life.
All right, Judge pointing out Simon's
your
life total.
10.
Life pad doesn't match the life totals. Now, another one. Can you imagine if Heath just went second makeshift binding?
He does get to,
Okay.
or excuse me, Heath gets to chip in there for 2. Oh, and see, this is a part where things start to fall apart a little bit, right?
Right.
You're drawing 1-mana cards. Like, Simon's not going to have cards that affect the board that little at this point in the game.
Simon has an Eavesdropper as well as a Warden in hand. So those are both big. And I believe with 7 mana, you can go Eavesdropper, Disguise, buff my Tipster. I have 3 blockers. Yes, you have 2 menace creatures, but you don't really have great attacks.
Interesting question is, how does Simon get around, like, he doesn't want to kill the skeleton.
No.
But he also doesn't want to take damage from it.
You have to kill it at some point.
Okay, you just have to kill it and say what's the worst that could happen.
Look, you're a 7. That's a 3-power menace creature. It has to die. I think that was a Plains for Heath. So, I think. So, they really just have to attack here. And here's the thing. When Heath attacks, this turn, the case won't be solved. So, they can't use the turn where they have nothing to go sacrificing and go for the tutor. The case will be solved at the end step. They can go tutoring next turn. The sacrifice is only a sorcery speed, so the case of the Stash Skeleton is definitely an awkward one. It doesn't play out as smoothly as you would like in Limited, where maximizing your mana usage is a huge thing.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and unless you have some insanely great bomb to go get with it, which I don't think Heath does.
No, we looked at their deck. Their
but
rares were the 2 cases, Stack Skeleton and the Crimson Pulse that they're splashing. Everything else, common, uncommon. I think when they eventually get to sacrifice this case, it's going to be the second makeshift binding just to deal with this Glintweaver.
I see. Yeah, and as we see, nicely there for Heath, they're able to actually trade off the skeleton for another card with keyword big.
Yeah, keyword large.
Yeah, you can see Simon Nielsen is very much able, thanks to the tunnel tipsters, to just go over the top of what Heath is planning. Heath really does need to finish off the game. They had a great start this game, but they needed another combat trick or an on the job or something like that to kind of slam the door. And with a little bit of extra time, you know, Simon went 6-drop, 7-drop on back-to-back turns.
I think Simon might get aggressive here.
It's just time to start slamming.
Yeah, you're bigger. The board is shut down. You have the Luxodon Eavesdropper. You're happy trading that for a Vigilante. On Heath's side, they played the land they drew, so Heath is hellbent, and Simon knows that. So Simon knows that he is clear. Tolsamir, I didn't even see that one in Simon's deck. That is great. Yeah. Push-pull. You're not really getting anything back. So Heath can go kill the Glintweaver, sacrifice my case, go get probably the makeshift binding to deal with Voja next turn, and then what? And then what?
Yeah, this is the problem, is that any of the lines that we put forward for Heath, they're still on the defensive, and the deck isn't designed for that.
Yep.
Yes, it may stem the bleeding and prolong the game for a while, but the bottom line is that what Heath really wants to do is try to get that 7 into a 0, and I don't believe that they have the tools to do that from this board spot, even with a demonic tutor effect of getting to search your library for any card you want.
And notably, Marshall, I believe Heath was 3 seats to the left of Jason. So now, this is what we were talking about that trickle-down effect of multiple players at the table being white, is Jason, 4 rares. Heath, none, really. So the second, the third white decks at the table, that is the question mark of the resilience they have, the ability they have to close out games. And we're seeing exactly that because right now, you know, in Magic, we refer to the ability to search your deck for any card as a demonic tutor, right? There's always a question of, if you were to demonic tutor here,
you don't have to reveal it, right?
Could you win the game, right? When you demonic tutor, literally, and you're not able to win the game, that suddenly becomes a problem.
Right, and by the way, Heath is going for the exact line that you described, and mainly that's a choice because it means that there is no way to simply push through the 7 damage or to put yourself in a position to do so. And well,
Now, there is a line here.
Heath is going to die quite quickly unless that Glint Weaver is dealt with.
There is a line. They could go for the makeshift binding they just suited up here and save the push-pull to try to go for pull out of nowhere.
Oh,
if Simon plays too aggressive, Simon knows the deck list. Simon knows that there is a pull on the other side.
Go ahead.
Wow.
Tolsimir, the exile.
Well, that's going to leave 5/5 trampling token Voja just sitting there, right?
Yes, but Tolsimir was the lifelink creature. This is Heath making a very clear indication of what their game plan is. You can't gain life. If I can survive this attack, which they do, I'm going to pull and try to win the game. So
I love this line from Heath.
there is a crowd control warden in Simon's graveyard.
Yes, there is.
Simon's dead if he has nothing. If he doesn't have a blocker to present here, he's just died to pull. Heath has navigated this game to this exact position.
Is this
Pull.
going to work?
Yes, I think Simon has a land and an alibi in hand. I think Heath goes, give me that eavesdropper, give me that warden, I'm going to attack you for lethal, and I don't think Simon can do anything about it here.
This would be incredible if this worked. And I don't think Heath has another choice.
Yep.
Heath is facing lethal, so you just do it.
Yep.
Oh my god.
Oh, and
my
Simon
God.
said, oh my God.
This is the cost of getting too aggressive. Simon is aware of the deck list and didn't play around this. Didn't leave back one blocker. One blocker probably locks up this game for Simon.
The tipster just as a chumper would have
Yep.
done it.
You only get one counter, right?
Well, these enter at the same time, correct?
Yeah.
Sometime? What is the question?
Whether this gets 1 or 2 counters when these enter at the same time.
Assuming Simon has nothing, is it relevant?
Okay, so
No.
it's just
Because
one.
this is still 8
It's still
damage,
legal.
even
To get
Yes.
one
without
counter
any
and
counter.
blue,
Correct.
And we'll go to combat, full attack and everything.
Did this work?
Cool.
Oh, airtight alibi from Simon Nielsen. And that
It
actually
does untap.
does
Okay.
untap and let him
Survive.
and in fact turn the table. That was so
So
close
close.
for Heath. What a sweet line.
Wow. Okay, the airtight alibi
Oh, sorry.
does
I won the
untap
game.
the
I untapped
Weaver
your block,
there.
went to 3, and yeah.
Oof. Okay, so very tight game there
End of
from
game
Simon.
one.
That one almost slipped away, but
Yeah.
Simon did have the insurance plan. with
Yeah,
the
yeah,
airtight
the
alibi.
airtight alibi does untap the creature in addition to giving hexproof.
Well played by both.
Yeah, wow.
We'll send this back.
Table B starting game 2.
Tunnel go.
All right, let's get into game number 2 here between. Hopefully we get another great game like that one.
Yeah, the power of Simon's deck really coming through there.
If you're just tuning in, well, first off, welcome. We're really happy to have you along. This is actually our second match of the day. Our first one lasted about 6 minutes or something. It was Jesse Hampton versus Jason Yee. And Jason really put on a show. They had one of the best Boros decks I've seen.
Planes go.
Really just incredible stuff.
Not even remotely close. The
Four
games.
incredible rare / mythics.
Mm-hmm.
And the game lasted about 5 minutes total. 2 games.
Native sound.
Oh.
And Monty finally admitted that you should just play Boros in every draft. So that was Jason's
It's like I take 3.
hard
That's
work
awesome.
there,
It's not
convincing
tasty.
Monty.
Really the biggest accomplishment they got that round was convincing
I mean, it
me.
would be,
Not
but-
not moving up to a 8-1.
Right.
It was the conviction.
And now we're in Simon Nielsen versus Heath Butler, and they played a really exciting game 1 just now, where Heath got off to a good start and then tried to steal the game, but Simon had just what he needed to prevent that and ended up taking game number 1.
We didn't.
And
We didn't replace
3
the
tunnel
other one.
tipsters in Simon's deck, so he does just have them on turn 2 so frequently that it allows him to keep up with the pace of the much faster black-white with a red splash deck from Heath. Now I'm curious if Heath mulliganed here, considering no 2-drop from them,
Yes.
3 cards left in hand, 2 of those are lands, just that 1 copy of push-pull as the only spell available. So this is not a good hand from Heath. This is not their game plan.
Right, and we saw in game 1, Heath, with the quick start, was able to put the game into a position where they could potentially finish it off, either just with a well-timed, combat trick removal spell on the job, something like that to push through more damage, or, as it turned out, a much longer game plan around push and pull. But Simon's game plan is very simple, and it really does involve this tunnel tipster to start powering out just bigger. Like, that's, I was joking around that the cards had keyword big, but his do. They're just huge, and they're bigger than what Heathe Butler brings to the table. That's a sample collector there for Simon. It's just going to be a 2-3 for now.
I think there was maybe some math about Heath's hand size there, as we did see them draw a card to correct things, and then draw the Unscrupulous Agent after. So a Sanguine Savior joining the hand there, and then an Unscrupulous Agent. So things looking a little better now for Heath.
Got a nice one, too. That's a good turn there.
That's
Double
a
spell
very
for
good turn.
Heath. Got Tulsimir out with Unscrupulous Agent, and then pushed away the tipster just to make sure that Simon doesn't get to start going too crazy too soon.
Yeah, if Simon does find evidence to collect here, even one would be enough so the sample collector can get a counter on it. That would be a great start. Notably, Tulsimir is exiled to the agent, so that's not in the graveyard for you to start using it to collect that evidence. The sample collector getting to a 3-4 would be really big when you're facing the agent on the other side, so would love to do that, but a second tunnel tipster, that gets the job done. Simon not attacking.
Yeah, 3-4 versus the alley assailant would be nice.
Yeah. Look, we're not past the early turns of the game yet. Normally, Heath having a lot of lands in hand and then starting to draw 1 and 2 drops, that might be a little too slow. It might be a problem. But Simon's only on 3 lands. So this isn't as bad as it could be, certainly, from Heath's side. And they can still add pressure to the board.
Combo 3. Okay.
Okay. Going to go for a fanatical strength here on the defense. It's not really where you want to be, but it worked. Simon Nielsen got away with it and turned that into a removal spell on the block.
That explains the no attack. Heath with the 5th land, able to deploy everything here. But you are seeing Simon missing a land drop the previous turn with the tunnel tipster dying to the push.
It's a 1-2 punch that's very tough.
Really set him behind.
Yeah, Simon has a mana-intensive deck. He's built it such that it produces a lot of mana, but he's found himself in a position here where that is not the case. Pushing that tunnel tipster, that was a big deal.
Yeah, and doesn't look like a land in Simon's hand here either. Does have a bite down on Crime with the evidence to collect if he wants to cast it here.
Go for Crime Stopper Sprite, it looks like.
Yeah, just get lower onto the board. I don't think you collect evidence.
He could collect his whole graveyard for this. Is it worth it?
I think you tap the agent and then attack with the sample collector and collect on that.
I like that line.
Yeah.
Because it's also more evidence efficient.
Ooh, okay. Simon's going on the Sprite, which does allow Heath to go 1-for-1 if they want to double block here. But it does leave Simon back with a better blocker, because now we know that's the Sanguine Savior as the disguise. Simon doesn't know that, but that means that is shut down. And if Simon just gets rid of the Repeat Offender here rather than the disguise, then there wouldn't really be any good attack for Heath.
As it turns out, Simon decides to get rid of the face-down disguise creature, which was that savior, so it's gone.
Yeah, Simon didn't know that, and
and
as Heath has done.
Once again, run out of cards, the top one, makeshift binding.
Yeah, 22.
That's what made the game interesting
The previous game.
last game. Let's see if that's going to be the same case here. Right now, Simon's still at a high life total. The mana situation is getting pressured, but a land off the top, and we can start seeing some action here from Nielsen, although he hasn't played one just yet.
I think Simon can miss one more land drop before the game starts veering away.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the benefits of a disguise format, formerly Morph formats as well, had this feature where you get this.
Yeah.
Right? Your 5 mana, 6 mana creature, at least you can play it like this in a scenario where you're stumbled on your mana and affect the board on some level.
Heath could just suspect the Repeat Offender here, get in for 2. I didn't get a good look at the draw. It may have been the second copy of Makeshift Binding that is in their deck. You don't really want to use that on this disguise creature here when you're not at risk of it flipping face up from Simon, most of them.
Yeah.
The only thing that would really punish Heath was if it was a Nervous Gardener, but I don't think Simon's deck had any of those, so with open deck lists, Heath doesn't have to worry about that.
So Heath does decide to just go ahead and suspect the repeat offender, get in. Down to 12 goes Nielsen.
But hidden land, 4th land off the top, means Simon's hand is essentially unlocked now. Has a crowd control warden as well as a bite down on crime and that cold case cracker.
There we go. It was what you thought. Cold case cracker. This is one of the best answers for it. It's the type of card that you could just throw in front of creatures that you don't really care if it dies. You get your card back, but it got makeshift binding and it is out of here. The other 3 mana is going to go into a +1/+1 counter on repeat offender, and down to 9 goes Nielsen. Can he continue to hit those land drops? Yes, sorta.
Yeah, Escape Tunnel gets the job done. Now he can bite down on Crime the Offender, and with Heath being hellbent, no cards in hand, and just an Unscrupulous Agent left, that essentially stems all the bleeding from Simon. Even if Heath develops a big creature here, Simon's going to untap and have big creatures of his own. So I think this is a decent stabilization for Simon. The question is, 24 to 9, are you trading 2 damage for 1? I don't think so. Simon disagrees.
Simon, I win this race. I mean,
it is 4 damage,
Simon,
excuse me, because of the bite down on crime. So
right.
maybe
so
you don't want to pass that up.
So it's hard to give up 4 for the 1. And then also, you know, Simon knows that that Heath has no cards in their hand, and Simon's got action.
Yep.
So this one could tip very, very quickly in Simon's favor, thanks to land number 5 now, perhaps even a 6th land, if he can find one. And that little 1/1 on the other side is going to look like nothing very quickly.
Yeah, the 1 damage came back, so 20 to 8 in life totals now. But with Heath drawing and passing, and Simon knowing they don't really have that much happening at instant speed, maybe they drew their on the job and didn't want to use it there. But otherwise, more often than not, they have a ton of creatures, and not playing ones means they probably hit a land.
And it's going to be Crowd Control Warden played face up this time for Nielsen. So he's got a 5/5 plus his disguise creature versus just a 1/1 currently.
Due Diligence, the draw from Heath, that's kind of a blank.
Yeah, not going to do much for him here.
Go ahead.
It's also just a land in Heath's hand. So kind of nothing going on for Heath Butler.
Yeah, Due Diligence is the type of card that if you hold it long enough, much like the push-pull in the previous game, it could give them a surprise burst. Maybe Simon's not counting on it. The previous game, of course, Simon was prepared. We'll see how this game goes, but you know, with each large creature that hits the board, now the Crocodile joining the board, it's getting harder and harder for Heath to really mount the offensive that they need to win this game.
Yeah, and that's the problem, is that Heath is looking down at their hand, and now the top decks are getting worse and worse, like this.
Yeah.
Snarling Gorehound, great on turn 1. What are we on, turn 9 or 10 or something? This is not where you want to be at this point. And matchup-wise, Simon just simply outclasses Heath's creatures at this stage of the game. And as we've seen, as Simon hit land number 5 and then land number 6, we've seen 5-drop into 6-drop. And, you know, they were 2 5/5 creatures, while Heath is like, all right, I'm going to play a 1/1, your move.
I think Simon drew his 2nd copy of Crowd Control Warden, if I'm not mistaken. So could just turn both big creatures sideways, play another big creature.
Yeah, this one's going to fall apart very quickly here for Heath Butler, as they are under massive assault. And if you look down, it's 2 1/1s. That's it.
Yeah.
Is this lethal? It's 1 away as the board sits.
If the face down card is the other Crowd Control Warden, and I saw wrong the card in hand, which it very well might be, then Heath is in blocking territory. And here's the thing. Against a blue-green deck with 6 mana,
totally,
basically every disguised creature is lethal here. So I think a block is essentially forced from Heath, and that's a problem.
And that's a big problem, because if Due Diligence was part of a miracle game plan to win this game, that will take that off the table.
Yeah, Due Diligence needs 2 creatures. You can't buff the same creature twice.
Right. Plus, Heath really needs all that damage from Due Diligence and something else to get in. You know, a pump spell or something, some other way to get damage through for them to win the game.
Yeah, Simon happy to take the damage provided here, not flip up the disguise creature, and just go for Inspector into the Collector.
Yeah, that was post-combat, so there will be no collecting this turn. But that doesn't really seem to be relevant at this point because Simon put 5 power on the table, then the next turn put 5 power on the table, then the next turn put 5 power on the table, and that was enough for Simon Nielsen to secure the victory over Heathe Butler there. And Simon just keeps on trucking.
Look, 1-1 for Handshake against Sanctum of All here in the feature match area this round.
They split? Okay.
Yeah, look, I think Simon told us his strategy. He told us what Handshake liked to do in draft. Then we saw the draft really play out the way they expect to. There was no white. Simon read the signals, ended up in a great blue-green deck, and really executed against the players fighting for white that maybe their decks didn't turn out as ideally as they would like. And that match was pretty clinical. There were some moments where, you know, a little bit of stress, but for the most part, very solid, very in control from Simon.
That's right. It's interesting because not only did Simon put himself perfectly in the colors that you would hope he would have found in that seat, but also the matchup played out exactly how he described it and we described it coming in. He just went bigger and was able to hold on to not die in the early part of the game.
Gum up the ground, ramp, start dropping big creatures, every turn have a follow-up. Those incidental clues make sure that when you get to that late game, you're not really going to suffer from being flooded. And that's exactly what happened was Simon was able to start attacking at the right moments and use that removal to stabilize.
That's right. Heath, so close there. Just needed another on the job, a couple of auspicious arrivals, something like that to get those Gorehounds through, you know, from those good early starts that they were able to put together. All right, well, we're going to take a short break here from the PT. When we come back, though, we'll have more limited action here from Chicago. Don't go anywhere.